My name is Anna. I am 26 years old, and I live in a small town in the south of England. When I was young, I had a dream. I wanted a happy life, one filled with love, laughter, and simplicity. I imagined getting married to someone kind and caring, someone I could share my dreams with. I wanted 1 or 2 children, a small house filled with warmth, and a good man by my side. I believed that love was easy, that it would all come together, just like in the fairy tales. But I was wrong. I met Daniel when I was 22. He was 25, tall, with dark brown hair and striking blue eyes. We met at a friend's party, and it was one of those moments that felt like destiny. He came over and smiled at me, and I felt a connection right away. He was funny, charming, and he told me he loved my sense of humor. We talked for hours that night, and when the party ended, he asked for my number. I gave it to him without hesitation. The next day, Daniel sent me a message. It said, "Hey, do you want to meet for coffee sometime?" I smiled when I saw it, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Of course, I agreed. We met the next day at a small cafe in the town. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, our dreams, our favorite books, our childhood memories. I liked him instantly, and I could tell he liked me too. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other often. Daniel made me laugh constantly, and he always had a way of making me feel special. He gave me flowers, sent sweet messages, and called me every night before bed. I was falling for him, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held. 3 months later, I found myself sitting on the couch at his flat, nervously twirling my hair. I had something to tell him, something I had been holding in my heart for weeks. "Daniel," I said softly, "I love you." He smiled and kissed me gently on the forehead. "I love you too, Anna," he said. It felt like the world had stopped spinning in that moment. I believed it. I believed we were perfect, that nothing could go wrong. We had been together for a year when I realized that my life was no longer just mine. It was shared with Daniel. He worked at a car garage, and I worked at a supermarket. We didn't have much money, but I didn't care. I was happy. I thought I had everything I wanted: love, a future, a family. But everything was about to change. One morning, something unexpected happened. I woke up feeling a bit off. At first, I thought it was just a cold, nothing to worry about. But the next day, I felt the same. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I was tired, nauseous, and I couldn't focus. My best friend Emma noticed something too. "Anna, maybe you're pregnant," she said. Half joking, half serious. I laughed nervously, thinking she was just being dramatic. "No, I don't think so," I replied. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. That evening, I decided to buy a pregnancy test. I wasn't sure if I was ready to know the truth, but I couldn't ignore the possibility any longer. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the test in my hand. My hands were shaking, and my heart was racing. I took the test and waited. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the result appeared. It was positive. My heart sank. I felt a mix of fear and disbelief. I had always dreamed of becoming a mother, but not like this. Not alone. I looked at the test again, just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But no, the 2 pink lines were unmistakable. That night, I went to Daniel's flat, my heart heavy, with the news I had to share. When I walked in, he was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, how was your day?" he asked, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I sat down next to him, my hands trembling. "Daniel," I said softly, "I have news." He looked at me with a curious expression. "What is it?" he asked. Sensing that something was different, I took a deep breath and said, I'm going to have a baby. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His face went pale, and he just stared at the floor. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. I waited for him to say something, anything. But when he finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. Are you sure? He asked quietly. I nodded. Yes, I took a test. I'm sure. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. He looked out, his back to me, as though he couldn't bear to look me in the eyes. This is not a good time, he said, his voice flat. I'm not ready to be a father. My heart dropped into my stomach. But we love each other, I said, my voice shaking. We can do this together. He didn't respond. He just turned his back on me, and I knew right then that things were changing. He wasn't ready, and maybe neither of us was. But I couldn't take back what I had just said. I couldn't erase the reality of what was happening. I was pregnant, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days were a blur. Daniel avoided me. He stopped calling and stopped replying to my messages. It felt like the world was slipping away from me. I tried to reach out to him, but every time I did, he ignored me. I was terrified, not just about being pregnant, but about facing this alone. One day, I decided to go to Daniel's flat. I knocked on his door, hoping that maybe he would talk to me, but there was no answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I stood there for a few moments, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I felt completely helpless. Finally, I sent him one last message. Please, Daniel, I need you. This isn't just about me. It's about our baby. Minutes passed before his response came. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I sat down on my bed and let the words sink in. The man I thought I loved, the man I thought would be by my side through everything, had walked away. I was left with nothing but the truth. I was pregnant, and I was alone. I called my parents, my voice trembling as I explained what had happened. My mom cried with me, holding me in her arms, telling me everything would be okay. My dad, usually a man of few words, was quiet at first. Then he said, We're here for you, Anna. You're not alone. They helped me pack my things and move back to their house. It felt strange, like I had stepped back in time. I was 26, but I felt like a child again, relying on my parents. I wasn't prepared for what was coming, but they were there for me, every step of the way. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of my pregnancy started to set in. I felt more and more tired as my belly grew. The doctor confirmed that everything was progressing as it should, and the heartbeat of my baby filled me with both wonder and fear. I smiled at the thought of becoming a mother, but I also cried, knowing that Daniel wouldn't be there to share it with me. The months passed slowly, and I worked at the supermarket to save money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start preparing. I bought baby clothes, a crib, and all the little things that would make our home feel like it belonged to us. Despite everything, I was determined to give my child the best life I could. Then one night, as I felt a strange, strong pain in my stomach, I knew that it was time. My mum rushed me to the hospital, where the nurse confirmed what I already knew. I was about to give birth. The pain was intense, but I held my mum's hand tightly, relying on her strength to get me through it. Hours passed before I finally heard that familiar cry. It was a girl. They handed her to me, this tiny, perfect little person. I kissed her forehead, overwhelmed by love. "Hello, baby," I whispered. "I'm your mom." Her name was Sophie, and she was beautiful. The days after Sophie was born were filled with both joy and exhaustion. My mom helped me with everything, from feeding Sophie to changing her diapers. She was a lifesaver, especially when I felt like I couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. I never expected being a mother would be so hard. I thought I knew what to expect, but the reality was much different. Sophie cried a lot, especially at night. I often found myself sitting in the dark, holding her close and trying to calm her. It wasn't easy. I was so tired, physically and emotionally drained. But every time I looked at Sophie's tiny face, I found the strength to keep going. She needed me, and I couldn't let her down. I remembered Daniel, but it was different now. He never came around. He didn't call. He didn't ask how Sophie was. I had no idea where he was, but I no longer cared. Sophie was my world now. I was determined to be the best mother I could be, even if I was doing it alone. One day I saw Daniel in town. He walked right past me, his eyes briefly meeting mine. Before he looked away, he didn't say a word. I wanted to shout at him, to ask him how he could just walk away from his own daughter. But I didn't. I just stood there, holding Sophie in her stroller, and watched him disappear. I whispered to Sophie, "You don't need him, baby. You have me, and I will always be here for you." As Sophie grew, I started to find a new rhythm in my life. At 5 months, I went back to work at the supermarket. It was hard to leave Sophie with my mom, but I needed the money. Every day I missed her, but I had no choice. I had to keep going. At work, I put on a smile for the customers. Even though inside I was exhausted, my feet ached, my back hurt, and I was always running around. But I didn't complain. I did what I had to do. When I got home, I cooked dinner, cleaned, and took care of Sophie. She was always my priority, and I never stopped for myself. There were times, especially at night, when I felt overwhelmed. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the wall, feeling so tired. But then I'd think about Sophie. I'd think about her smile, her laugh, and how lucky I was to have her. She was my reason for everything. "You are tired, Anna," I'd tell myself. "But you are strong. You can do this." And I kept going, because I was a mother, and nothing in the world could change that. Life in our little flat was not easy. It was small, just 1 bedroom and a tiny kitchen, but it was ours. I had always dreamed of a cozy home filled with love, but the reality was far from perfect. I worked long hours at the supermarket, and I was often too tired to think straight. But every day, Sophie gave me a reason to keep going. There were days when I felt completely drained. I worked, cooked, cleaned, and took care of Sophie. I never stopped. When I got home at night, my feet ached, and my body screamed for rest. But there was no time for that. Sophie needed me. And so, I continued, even though I could feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me. Some nights, when Sophie was asleep, I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea, staring at the wall. It felt like the world was moving around me, and I was stuck in one place. I didn't have anyone to talk to, no one to share my thoughts with. My friends had their own lives now, their own families, and I was alone. I had never imagined this would be my life. I had once dreamed of love, marriage, and a happy family. But instead, I was raising Sophie on my own. And though it was hard, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sophie was my reason to smile, my reason to push forward. One evening, after a long day at work, I was sitting in the living room, and Sophie walked up to me, holding her favorite stuffed animal. She looked at me with those big brown eyes and smiled. That smile, so innocent and pure, made everything worth it. No matter how tired I was, no matter how much I missed having someone to share my life with, Sophie made everything okay. "You are my sunshine," I whispered, holding her tight, and in that moment, I knew I was doing everything I could for her. But the reality of being a single mother wasn't always easy. Money was a constant worry. My job didn't pay enough to cover everything, and I had to make sacrifices. I bought Sophie everything she needed, but never bought anything for myself. My clothes were old, and I barely had time to take care of myself. There were times when I had to choose between buying food and paying bills. I would make do with what I had, but I always made sure Sophie had what she needed. One day, I had to take a sick day from work because Sophie wasn't feeling well. She had a fever, and I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone. I called my boss and explained, but he wasn't happy. "You can't miss so many days, Anna," he said. "You need this job." I felt a pit in my stomach. I needed the job. I needed the money. But I couldn't leave Sophie. My baby needs me. I said quietly, my voice trembling. The next day, when I returned to work, I tried my best to push my fears aside. I needed the money, and I couldn't afford to lose my job. But I also needed to be there for Sophie. The balance between work and motherhood was a constant struggle. Sophie recovered quickly from her fever, and I was relieved, but the stress never stopped. There was always something to worry about. Would I have enough money for the rent? Could I buy Sophie new clothes for the winter? What if something happened to her? These thoughts were always in the back of my mind, but I never let them show. I had to stay strong for Sophie, for myself, at night when Sophie was asleep. I would sit in the kitchen and think about everything. I missed the life I had imagined for myself. I missed having someone to talk to, someone to share the burden with. But I was a mother now, and that meant I had to be strong. I am doing this, I would say to myself. I am doing this for Sophie. And in those quiet moments, I reminded myself that even though it wasn't easy, I had everything I needed. I had Sophie, and that was enough. One morning, as I was rushing to get ready for work, Sophie came into the kitchen, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She was still so young, but in some ways, she seemed older than her age. She had been through a lot already, and I could see the maturity in her eyes, even though she was just 4. "Mama, I don't want you to go to work today," she said, softly, her small voice breaking through my hurried thoughts. I knelt down to her level, brushing her messy hair from her face. "Sweetheart, I have to go to work. We need money to buy food and pay the bills. You understand, don't you?" Sophie nodded, but I could tell she didn't really understand. How could she? How could a little girl understand the weight of responsibility that I carried every single day? I gave her a quick hug before I had to rush out the door. My heart felt heavy as I kissed her goodbye. I hated leaving her, but there was no other choice. The bills needed to be paid, and I had no other option but to work hard every day. That afternoon, as I was working at the checkout counter, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from my sister, Emily. "Anna, I need to talk to you. It's important. Can you call me as soon as you can?" My stomach twisted. Emily was never one to be dramatic, so I knew this had to be serious. I quickly found a quiet moment to call her. "Hey, Em, what's up?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, despite the nervousness bubbling inside me. "Anna," Emily's voice was tight. "I have something to tell you, and I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to hear it." I felt a surge of panic. "What's going on, Em? Just tell me." There was a long pause before she finally spoke. "Anna, Daniel's mother called me today. She said that Daniel wants to come back to your life. He wants to be a father to Sophie. He wants to start over, Anna." For a moment, everything around me seemed to go silent. My hands froze, holding the barcode scanner, and my heart seemed to stop. Daniel. After all these years, he wanted to come back. After everything he had put me through, after abandoning Sophie and me, now he wanted to step into our lives as if nothing had happened. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't know what to think, Anna. Emily said. But he says he's changed. He says he wants to do better for Sophie. He's even talking about moving back to town. I felt a mixture of emotions, anger, confusion, and fear. I wanted to protect Sophie from the pain that Daniel had caused her. I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. He had left me when I needed him most. He had abandoned Sophie, and I couldn't forget the hurt that still lingered from those years. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I replied quietly, my voice thick with emotion. I've been raising Sophie on my own for so long. I don't know if I can trust him. I understand, Emily said softly. I just thought you should know, but take your time. You don't have to make any decisions right now. After hanging up, I stood frozen in the middle of the store, my mind spinning. Daniel, the man who had once promised me everything, only to disappear when it mattered most. Now, after all these years, he wanted to come back into our lives. I couldn't even begin to process everything. I had built my life without him. I had created a home for Sophie and me. We were doing fine without him, even though it was hard. But now, with him wanting to return, everything seemed uncertain. Would Sophie want to know her father? Was it possible for me to let him back in? That night, as I lay beside Sophie, watching her sleep peacefully, I couldn't shake the thoughts that kept running through my mind. I didn't want to hurt Sophie again, but I also didn't want her to be without a father. I couldn't make this decision alone. I needed to think about what was best for her. The question remained, could I ever forgive Daniel? Could I let him back into our lives? Or was it too late for us? The following days felt like a blur. I spent hours wrestling with my thoughts, trying to decide what to do. Daniel's sudden reappearance had thrown everything off balance. On one hand, I wanted to believe that people could change, that maybe Daniel had truly learned from his mistakes. On the other hand, the scars he had left on my heart, and on Sophie's, were not easy to forget. Trust wasn't something I could give away lightly. I talked to Emily again. I poured my heart out to her, explaining how torn I felt. I don't know if I can do this, Em. I don't know if I can trust him again. I've built a life for Sophie and me, and I don't want that to change. But what if Sophie needs him? What if she's missing something I can't give her? Emily listened patiently, and then, in her usual calm tone, she said, Anna, I get it. But you don't have to make this decision alone. Maybe you could meet with him, hear him out. You're not obligated to forgive him right away. But you deserve to know if he's serious. Her words stuck with me. Maybe meeting with Daniel was the only way to move forward. I couldn't keep living in this state of confusion. I had to make a choice, for me and for Sophie. After a few days of thinking it over, I finally called him. My hands were trembling as I dialed the number, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Hello. Daniel's voice was tentative on the other end. Daniel, I said, my voice steady, but firm. We need to talk. I know, he replied, quickly. I've been trying to find the right words, but I think I've waited too long. Can we meet? I want to explain everything. I agreed to meet him the following Saturday at a small cafe in town. The idea of facing him again brought back a flood of memories, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But I had to do this for Sophie, for closure. The day arrived, and my heart raced as I walked into the cafe. I hadn't seen Daniel in years, and yet seeing him again was like stepping into a memory. He looked different, older, more tired, but the same familiar features remained. He stood up when he saw me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Anna, he said, softly, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you'd never agree to meet. I sat down across from him, taking a deep breath before speaking. I'm here because I need answers, Daniel. Sophie deserves That much. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I know. I failed you both. I've thought about that every day. The mistakes I made. I can't undo them, but I want to make it right. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, Anna. But I need you to know that I want to be a part of Sophie's life. I want to try, at least. I looked at him, weighing his words. Could I believe him? Could I trust him again after all these years of hurt? I'm not sure I can forgive you, Daniel, I said, my voice shaking. But I'm willing to give you a chance. For Sophie. But know this. If you hurt her again, I won't hesitate to protect her. I won't let her suffer the way I did. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I won't. I swear, Anna. I won't make the same mistakes. I stayed silent for a moment, processing everything he had said. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't a perfect resolution. But maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning. For all of us. As I left the cafe, I felt a mixture of hope and fear. I didn't know what the future held, but I was taking the first step toward healing. Sophie deserved a chance to know her father, and I deserved to move on from the past. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the broken pieces of the past. And as I thought about that, I realized that sometimes, even the hardest decisions could lead to new beginnings.